Love is the first and most essential bond, but it's also the invisible thread, woven with time, attention, and tenderness through consistent nurturing relationships.
Zara Tindall had spent years refusing to turn grief into headlines. Then, in one unsteady moment, she broke that silence. Her words were not about crowns or palace politics. They were about a banquet her children nearly lost, and the woman who walked them through it. Catherine stood between my children and a room that was suddenly too cold for them. It sounded like praise. But beneath that praise sat something sharper. An admission about Zara's own childhood, that no one in the family expected her to speak aloud. Before we go deeper into what this really means, for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Zara delivered this confession during a recorded private interview, later released to a small circle, and her composed beginning only made the emotion underneath more visible. As Princess Anne's daughter, she had grown up close to the monarchy without carrying a royal title, meaning she belonged to the family, while living outside the formal duties attached to senior, working royals. That distance gave her freedom. It also taught her, very early, to keep her hands steady when no one was watching. Then Zara named what Catherine had given Mia, Lena, and Lucas. She spoke of quiet presence, of small courtesies no one else thought to offer, of attention that made her children feel safe in rooms that had just been rearranged against them. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, held a senior role as the future king's wife, but her value to the children had nothing to do with rank. She checked on them before the doors opened. She watched where they sat. She noticed when one of them drifted toward the edge of the room. Mike Tindall saw it first. Zara stopped, speaking mid-sentence, pressed her lips together, and looked down as though the next words had grown heavier than she was ready to lift. He placed a hand against her arm and said nothing. That silence mattered because what came next was no longer only praise for Catherine. It was also an admission that Zara had once needed that same protection and had learned to live without ever asking for it. One memory made everything sharper. Zara hinted at a private episode involving Mia when the young girl felt a loneliness her mother recognized instantly from her own childhood. Catherine stepped into that moment before the discomfort could harden into shame. And what she did left Zara shaken by one brutal comparison. Catherine understood her daughter in minutes. Zara had spent years teaching herself not to need it. Suddenly, the question hovering over the family became impossible to ignore. If Catherine could see what Zara's children needed so naturally, why had nobody seen the same need in Zara when she was still young? And, to understand why Zara's words landed with such weight, the story has to move beyond Catherine's kindness and into the very different banquet night that started everything. The banquet in question was an official state dinner held at Buckingham Palace, an event where senior royals were expected to take their assigned seats, follow protocol, and present a unified image of the family. Camilla had originally been told she would walk into the hall ahead of several younger royals, including Mia. That arrangement was changed at the last minute. Camilla was informed that her entrance order had been adjusted, that she would not be processing through the same doorway as the children, and that her seat at the main table had been reassigned. The official explanation was ceremonial. Inside the family, the change felt personal. Catherine had watched the rearrangement with quiet focus. She noticed how quickly Camilla's name had been lifted from one part of the schedule. She noticed who was moved closer to the doorway. She noticed that Mia had been told, without ceremony, that she would now be expected to walk behind a grandmother whose place in the room had just been quietly reduced. Zara saw Catherine watching. She also saw her daughter freeze. Mia had been coached for weeks about where to stand, when to greet, and how to behave in a hall full of crowned heads. The new instructions came with no explanation. They simply arrived, the way royal corrections always arrived. Zara felt something tighten in her chest, because she had been a child in that palace. She had also been told to adjust without complaint. Catherine moved first. She did not challenge the rearrangement. She did not argue protocol. She simply shifted where Mia would sit, walked her through the new path herself, and kept a hand on the girl's shoulder so steady that no one watching could tell whether the touch was comfort or navigation. the Princess of Wales did not name what she was doing. She did not need to. Zara felt it the instant she saw it. That small act set everything else in motion. The story was no longer about a seat at a table. It was about 3 generations of royal women standing on the same emotional ground. Princess Anne, Zara herself, and Catherine. None of them were weak. None of them lived ordinary lives. Yet endurance had never been the real question. The real question was whether royal children were taught to absorb what frightened them, or whether someone finally decided that absorption was no longer enough. Catherine, Zara realized, had chosen the second path. Zara had always understood what her mother was trying to do. Princess Anne believed deeply in discipline, restraint, and the idea that children should grow without leaning on royal status. She raised Peter, Phillips, and Zara with structure and practicality, determined that neither would mistake privilege for protection. A royal title, meaning an official rank within the monarchy, was never meant to be the foundation of their identity. Anne wanted her children to stand on their own. Zara respected that. But respect did not erase memory. Catherine approached childhood from a different place. With George, Charlotte, and Louis, structure still mattered, but reassurance mattered too. She believed children could learn composure without being made to hide, fear frustration, or confusion. Zara had noticed the difference long before she ever spoke publicly about it. She saw how Catherine listened before correcting. She saw how she gave a child time to recover before expecting composure. She saw how emotional comfort was never treated as indulgence. One small moment stayed with her. During a rehearsal for the banquet weekend, Lena grew upset over something that might have looked minor to anyone else. Catherine noticed before anyone could dismiss it. She crouched beside the girl, stayed close, and waited. She did not tell Lena to stop crying. She did not rush her. She let her breathe, let her speak, and only answered when the child was ready. Zara felt something open inside her that she had kept locked for decades. The moment was gentle, but it carried enormous weight because it reminded her of everything she had once been told to handle alone. She had never doubted Anne's love. That was not the wound. The wound was learning that love and emotional comfort were not always delivered in the same breath. Mike noticed her silence later. He had seen the way Zara watched Catherine with Lena, and he knew admiration alone could not explain it. When he finally asked why the moment had affected her so deeply, Zara hesitated before saying the words she had never given language to before. Because I remember being moved aside so no one else had to feel uncomfortable. That sentence changed the meaning of everything. Zara's loyalty to Catherine had not appeared suddenly. It had been building through quiet moments exactly like this until the banquet night pushed that loyalty beyond gratitude and into something far more personal. That night would become the dividing line in Zara's memory. The moment before she merely trusted Catherine's instinct, and the moment after she understood exactly what Catherine was willing to do for her children. Every family has one moment that looks insignificant from the outside, but becomes unforgettable to the people who lived it. For Zara, that moment came when Mia was still young enough to hide embarrassment behind anger. The banquet hall had become overwhelming. Too many eyes, too much expectation, too many whispered instructions about standing properly and smiling at the right moments. Zara was preparing to remove her daughter quietly when Catherine noticed something everyone else had missed. Mia was not misbehaving. She was afraid. Buckingham Palace banquet nights carry their own pressure. Buckingham Palace is the monarch's primary official residence in London and the traditional setting for state ceremonies where family presence sits beside public expectation. Children were expected to greet relatives, manage attention, and move through traditions they had barely learned to understand. Mia knew she belonged to the family. She also knew her place was different from George and Charlotte. That difference suddenly became painful when another child quietly asked why Mia was not walking in alongside the working royals. Mia changed after that question. She became quiet, then defensive, then desperate to leave. Zara recognized the pattern immediately because she had lived her own version of it. When her daughter finally slipped away and whispered through tears, "I don't belong at a table like this," Zara froze. The words struck too close. She had grown up as the monarch's granddaughter, while carrying no title, learning early that belonging and status were not always experienced in the same way. Catherine entered before Zara could find the right answer. She sent an aide away, lowered herself beside Mia, and refused to rush her. The Princess of Wales did not correct the child or explain protocol. She told her something simpler. She never had to earn her seat beside people who loved her. Zara watched in silence, and the moment unsettled her because Catherine was not offering privilege. She was offering certainty. Zara felt the old ache return. She remembered what it was like to understand that she was loved, but still wonder whether she fully fit into the world around her. Catherine gave Mia the reassurance Zara had once needed herself, and she did it without making the girl feel weak for needing it. Then Catherine made one final choice. She brought Mia back beside Charlotte rather than allowing her to return alone. No speech followed. No one announced what had happened. But Zara understood exactly what had been done. Years later, when she finally raised that memory with Princess Anne, Zara expected resistance. Instead, she opened a conversation neither woman had ever been ready to face. What began as Catherine protecting one frightened child was about to become something harder. Zara confronting the woman who had taught her that strength meant never needing protection at all. The confrontation did not happen in front of courtiers. There were no cameras, no aides, and no carefully prepared palace language. It happened between a mother and daughter who knew each other too well to hide behind titles. Zara had spent decades defending Princess Anne's toughness, even admiring it. But after watching Catherine with Mia, something inside her shifted. For the first time, Zara was no longer asking whether her childhood had made her strong. She was asking what that strength had cost. Zara arrived determined to keep the conversation about Mia. She explained how deeply the girl had been shaken by feeling different from the more visible, royal cousins, and how quickly that small insecurity had become something painful. Anne listened without interrupting. The Princess Royal, a title traditionally given to the monarch's eldest daughter, had always believed independence mattered more than status. She reminded Zara that children had to build confidence from within, the same principle she had applied to Peter and Zara when they were young. Zara understood the argument because she had defended it herself for years. But this time, she did not let the conversation end there. She leaned into the silence and said, "Quietly, I know what you were trying to teach me, but sometimes I didn't need a lesson. I needed someone to notice." Anne's expression changed. For several seconds, she said nothing. That silence carried more weight than any argument ever could. Zara did not accuse her mother of failing to love her. That would have been easier. Instead, she admitted something far harder. She had always known Anne cared, but she had also learned to bury fear, confusion, and hurt before anyone could see them. Strength had protected her. Sometimes it had also left her alone. Then Zara told her about Catherine sitting beside Mia, refusing to rush the child, refusing to make her feel ashamed. Anne listened differently. When the story ended, she asked one question. "Did it help her?" "Yes," Zara answered. "More than you know." The simplicity of that exchange broke through every debate about royal duty, discipline, and resilience. Anne finally admitted that her generation had understood protection another way. She had believed preparing a child for hardship was itself an act of love. Zara began to see the painful truth between them. Perhaps the wound had never been a lack of care. Perhaps they had simply inherited two different languages for expressing it. But that realization changed something else. Anne now understood why Catherine mattered so deeply to Zara and why her daughter would no longer stay quiet if that bond was ever challenged. Because once Zara understood what Catherine represented to her children, gratitude became allegiance. And that allegiance would soon matter in a room where Catherine's influence was being quietly questioned. Royal power is not always expressed through crowns or constitutional authority. Sometimes it appears in something smaller. Who notices when everyone else has looked away? Catherine's growing presence within the family had become impossible to ignore, particularly around the younger generation. But admiration can invite resistance. Concerns emerged that she was becoming too central to family decisions involving the children. Zara found herself facing an unexpected choice, and this time, she did not hesitate. Catherine had gradually become the person who helped keep the younger cousins connected. She remembered birthdays, encouraged family time, checked that children with very different futures were still treated as part of one family, and often became the quiet link between households. As the future queen, meaning the woman expected one day to stand beside William when he becomes king, her responsibilities already carried enormous public weight. That was exactly why some senior voices began to question whether so much informal family dependence should rest on her shoulders. Zara heard the concern differently. To her, this was not about schedules or dividing responsibilities. It was about trust. Mia, Lena, and Lucas did not see Catherine as someone managing a royal system. They saw someone who noticed them. After everything Zara had already confronted about her own childhood, removing that presence now felt less like sensible organization and more like taking away something her children had quietly come to depend on. Then the discussion shifted. During a private, family meeting, one suggestion was made that Catherine should step back from certain gatherings involving the younger generation. The words were careful, almost harmless. Zara did not treat them that way. She moved forward and answered with controlled certainty. "Not where my children are concerned." William looked at her, surprised by how quickly the line had been drawn. Catherine was even more uncomfortable. She told Zara that she had never wanted to replace anyone's role as a parent, grandparent, or senior member of the family. The princess understood why she said it. She also understood why Zara refused to let the point stand unanswered. "That is exactly why they trust you," Zara replied. Catherine had never demanded authority over the children. She had never used rank to create closeness. She had simply been present when hierarchy, public duties, family schedules, and tradition pulled every adult in another direction. Zara knew the difference because she had spent years learning what happened when children were expected to manage difficult feelings quietly. Word of her defense eventually reached Princess Anne.